All right, ladies and gentlemen, we will start. Good morning, Mr. Andy. Hey, Jay, get that salmon croquette out the way. It doesn't matter who it is. Come on. All right. The time is now 8:40. Welcome to the most exciting portion of your Tuesday, another amazing rendition of the Sarah Stevenson Tuesday Forum. My name is Winston Robinson. I am your facilitator today, along co-facilitators, Ms. Laura McClellan, Ms. Carlenia Ivory Canty, Ms. Jackie Edwards Walton, Ms. Natalie McElrath, our timekeeper, Ms. Mary Johnson, Mr. Shea Abdullah, Mr. Gary Young, Ms. Jasmine Wright, our chaplain, Ms. Sarita Sherrill, Steve Johnston, our website facilitator and archivist, and a house musician, Dr. Thomas. Our forum runs from 8:30 to 9:45, at which time we will pause for announcements from the audience. Announcements can also be sent to Steve at SJohnston@TuesdayForumCharlotte.org. That's Johnston with a T. And as we do every Tuesday, we open with a prayer. And I do not see Mr. Ken Coons. Good brother, Pride Patton, come on.
Good morning. I was chastised last week by the bishop by not getting his permission to pray, so I saw him later in the week, so he's giving me a covering to stand this morning, so let's pray.
Hold the mic close to your mouth.
Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, we just thank you for this opportunity once again to be in your presence. Lord, we thank you for rising us up this morning and starting us on our way. Lord, we're thankful for the abundance this morning of overflow of people that's come out to hear this important topic that we're wrestling with in our community, Lord. We're thankful for our leaders, Lord. We're thankful for the steadfast commitment of the local politicians in this area that thought it not robbery to give them time this morning, Lord. We thank you for those legacy leaders, Lord. Mr. Harvey Gantt, Lord. We thank you for him and all that he's meant to our community and continues to pour into this community, Lord. We thank you for the remnants of all the leaders that have gone on and continue to bless us, just like this forum that was founded in the name of Ms. Sarah Stevenson, Lord. So, Lord, we thank you. We ask that her blessings continue to flow, Lord, and that we will continue to prosper as a community. These and other blessings we ask in your precious name. We pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Brother Brett Patton with the R&B voice with prayer. Man, I never heard Quiet Storm prayer. Absolutely. So again, after prayer, we always have a moment for silence. And that's when you take the time to pull out your phone and put it on silent, as well as turn the notifications down and let us know what video you're watching. Because it can get crazy on the internet. So please be courteous. Our guest today, we have the esteemed former Secretary of Transportation and former Mayor of Charlotte, Mr. Anthony Foxx, as well as our City Council Representative for District 1, Dante Anderson. So following the presentation, we will take questions from the audience. Please raise your hand and we will add your name to the list. I will call on you in the order in which the names were added to said list. Also, questions should be questions, and questions should be no longer than 30 seconds. The answer you receive is the answer you will have to accept. We go on the West Side Rules theory of it is what it is. We have a timekeeper, Ms. Natalie McElrath, who will signal when time limits are met. And without further ado,
questions 30 seconds.
Yes, questions. Answers 2 minutes. Answers. Last time we saw Mr. Foxx and kept us on the phone for hours on Zoom. But again, incredible speaker. We were grateful to have him. Councilwoman Anderson, please.
Thank you, sir, and very happy to be here with you all for the Tuesday morning forum. And I have the pleasure of introducing Secretary Foxx. And Secretary, they told me, they said everybody in the room knows you, so I don't really have to say a whole lot about you, but I do want to hit some highlights. Of course, you know, he is our very own, right? Born and bred right here in Queen City, a Davidson College graduate. New York University School of Law. We have that in common. I went to NYU as well, so I spent some time in New York. But really want to focus a little bit on your time as mayor, because you led us through the Great Recession when you were leading the city. And you focused on a demand-driven workforce, and it was an innovative approach to workforce development at the time. And it was something that went on to become a national model. And so, of course, he was tapped to be the 17th United States Secretary of Transportation from 2013 to 2017, where he did some really great things there as well as it relates to infrastructure and transportation. In particular, you started the Smart Cities Challenge, which we and Charlotte aspire to be a smart city, right, on all ends. And so it is my absolute pleasure to introduce former mayor, former city council member, Secretary Anthony Foxx. So this time is really meant for you all. So Secretary Foxx is going to share some of his wisdom, and then we're going to open it up for questions, because we really want to have an open dialogue about transportation, infrastructure, transit, what it really means for our city. But first, we'll hand it over to Secretary Foxx to share some thoughts with us.
Thank you, council members. Great to be here. It's great to be among all of my great friends and family. My Aunt Mary is here. Over there. Sorry, I have glasses, so I don't know who that was, but anyway. My heroes in this community, Harvey Gant and Mel Watt, who are here among us. And there's a picture in the Charlotte Observer when I was in the 4th grade at Brooklyn Avenue of Thomas More, and I was sitting on his knee. And so it's great to see you here as well, and you're continuing to do great work. I'm just going to talk for just 5 minutes, I hope, and then leave it to questions about what's happening. As we speak, a piece of legislation is being signed into law today that will avail this community of a 1-cent sales tax, subject to voters approving it, that will potentially transform this region. And the one thing I would say, if you don't remember anything else that I say, the one thing I would say is there is no place in America that is a better place to be right now than this region, because of the opportunity we have to shape the region in the way that we choose. It's a minor miracle, given the politics that are swirling around the country right now, that to have an opportunity to do an additional sales tax. But I'll just add a little bit of context to it. When I was transportation secretary, I went to all 50 states. And I got to see transit in a lot of different contexts. I was in Native American country seeing transit experienced by people who lived on reservations. I was in Detroit, where some of you are familiar with Detroit, but in Detroit, the city bus system ends at the city limits. And many of the jobs are beyond the city limits. And so people take a bus to get to the city limits, and then they have to find a way to get to their job beyond that. Why? Because the region could not figure out a way to cooperate. You look at some cities like Austin, Seattle, Los Angeles that have passed big referenda in the last decade or so. And in many cases, those referenda are passed and there's still controversies that emerge as a result of it. And the reason why I think it's such a wonderful moment to be in this community with the choice and the opportunity and the chance this community has is because I'm walking around the country now, I'm seeing people that are saying, gosh, what can we do? How do we fix what's broken? And well, you have an opportunity today to have a sustained and deep engagement on shaping this region. And if you do it well on transit, it gives you an opportunity to do it well in the broader sense. Because sometimes we want to set it and forget. You know, we want a decision get made by somebody and for it to just be a good decision in perpetuity. But to do this kind of work right, you have to be engaged in it every single day. The buses. I took the number 6 bus to get my first job. And that number 6 bus no longer goes deep into my neighborhood. I fought hard to get east-west connectivity on the rail system. Why? Because that is permanent. The buses can be changed, but the tracks can't be changed. And that is now part of the system and part of what this referendum will support. So, but let me just say this. You're not gonna find a perfect transit setup. There's not a perfect governance model. There's not a perfect funding stream. Nothing is perfect about it. But don't let perfect be the enemy of the good. And don't allow yourselves to think that for 1 second, this system is going to be what it could be just because it's there. It requires us to be involved at every step of the way. And the good news is you've got good elected officials who care deeply about this community, who want to make sure that the authority is representative. So I'm going to stop. I can answer questions, but I'm happy to give you context or go deeper into these examples elsewhere or to answer any questions you have. But let me just say one last thing. I was looking at this as I was walking in, and it's a quote from the great philosopher Denzel Washington. And I think it applies to this, and it applies to broader questions about our democracy. He says, dreams without goals are just dreams, and ultimately they fuel disappointment. On the road to achieving your dreams, you must apply discipline, but more importantly, consistency, because without commitment, you will never start, and without consistency, you will never finish. And I think what you're being called to do by imagining a future with this 1 cent sales tax is to practice discipline and consistency in our engagement as this system is built out. That's all I have to say. Thank you. Questions?
All right, so again, I have to reiterate, please, questions, 30 seconds. Responses, please, fewer than 2 minutes. Tuesday morning forum tradition, we always open with a question from either Tommy Robinson or Mr. Ken Coombs. Mr. Ken Coombs, please, what's your first question?
You used the term discipline and consistency. And there was an organization called the Charlotte Business League back in the 70s and 80s. And what they were asking for then, here we are 40-some years later, we're still asking for the same thing. So there's consistent discipline and consistency in denial of a lot of opportunity. So my question to you is, to what extent do you see the discipline and consistency in establishing this through this 1 cent tax of the extension of the rail line. Opportunities for the workforce development of businesses and housing along the line, and the history show that the rail lines that we have drawn have not resulted in opportunities, nor have they resulted in housing for people who need it along those lines. So where is the discipline and consistency to break this model of 40 years of discipline and consistent denial?
I don't, thank you for the question. I look back at the blue line and what the city did with the blue line was they pre-zoned a large part of those corridors for housing. And there's a difference, and I think you understand the difference between workforce and affordable housing. A lot of the housing that's come up along the blue line has been workforce, which isn't necessarily at the lowest price point for people, but it allows teachers and folks to live along the corridor. We debated, and Councilmember Mitchell here will remember, we debated putting more affordable housing on the Blue Line extension. And at the time, that issue was not supported by a majority of the city council. I supported it, and there were others who did. And this is what I'm talking about, is that as these decisions, you know, sales tax is one decision point. Who's going to serve on the authority? That's another decision point. Who's going to chair the authority? That's another decision point. There's an interim CATS CEO, presumably there's going to need to be a permanent person. So who is that person going to be? That's another decision point. Which lines are going to get built and when and at what cost? And to your point, you know, to what extent is there coordination between this authority and local government on preserving and allowing more affordable housing to be built? You know, this is all stuff that we have to be paying attention to all along the way, and making sure that elected officials know when we think they're doing it well and when they're not doing it well. Now, let me just say, I haven't seen a perfect system. I've been all over 50 states. I've seen a lot of transit systems. I've not seen a perfect one. But I have seen some good things. So, for instance, in Los Angeles, we opened up a line in Crenshaw. Crenshaw, as you know, is historically underserved part of Los Angeles. A lot of African Americans in that area. We created a workforce program. This is the federal government. We created a workforce program there so that people who live there could be part of working on that line. I've seen this happen. It's possible. But it takes putting fire to the feet of the people who are making these decisions to do it. But it can be done.
All right, after that exchange, we're really going to enforce the rules. So
Well,
30
I
seconds.
saw a 30-second come up on me.
No.
Oh,
So 30 seconds question. All right, Gary.
Derek, go ahead, Derek.
Alright, yeah. So my question did center around kind of what Ken asked, so I'll pivot a tad bit. So currently we're under attack from a DE&I lens with our state and our federal government. How do you see that impacting the mobilization locally of utilizing those type of businesses on this project, if any?
This is a complicated question because, you know, it's increasingly becoming a legal question of what can be done. But, you know, I think the small business program, we went through this 15 years ago with the MWBE program in Charlotte. And we actually asked Julius Chambers to help us sort of reinvent that program. And he did. He helped us do it. I think we're gonna have to gravitate more towards the small business programs, given the legal environment that we're in, and to make generous use of that. That's the best answer I can give you. I wish I could give you a better answer. I'm not even saying this is the answer I would like to be giving you, but it's just what it is.
The other piece I'd like to add to that is currently you have House Bill 171 in the General Assembly right now that is specifically addressing DEI practices and what it will be legal in the future in the great state of North Carolina and what will be illegal with penalty. And so as we are having our bill signed today, we're also seeing other headwinds as it relates to DEI that can be codified in the very near future.
All right, we have Dr. Blanchpin and then Mr. Robert Dawkins.
Good morning, Mr. Foxx.
Good morning.
Everybody like to get quotes, and I'm gonna get one from Dr. Blanchpin.
Okay.
If yesterday was today, and today was yesterday, what would tomorrow be? Dr. Blanchpin. So, saying that, so I want you to think about this. You are, that's deep, right? Yes, it is.
All right, this is Dr. Payne, we got a long day.
Okay. So my question, because you've been to all these 50 states and everything, my question is, I'm still in I'm in an area in the university and we still don't have things, so with transportation. And I hear you talking a lot about transportation, and I've been over there for 30 years, so, you know, this 1% and all these other percents.
Thank you so much.
What are you gonna do?
What am I gonna do? I don't already know what I'm gonna do. You know, there's, you know, everybody's got their own idea of what they want out of the transportation. So for some communities, it's the sidewalks. Some areas is bicycle lanes, some places it's a new road cut, some places it's all different. What I wish we could do, and what is increasingly impossible to do, is to mobilize all the resources we have available to solve problems, you know, in a more sensible way. But, you know, the problem we had at the federal level was for every dollar we spent on surface transportation, we were told that we had to spend no more than 20 cents on that dollar on transit. So 80% of it went to roads. Now, some communities probably need more money for roads than that. Some communities need more for transit than that, but we could never be that flexible. You know, I could critique this bill. I could point out things that I think are challenges with it. You know, one of them being how prescriptive it is about what needs to be spent on what. But, you know, I'd rather have the option to use this cent to do the good that it can do than not have it. So, you know, that's kind of the choice. Yeah.
Glad to see you, Anthony. So this is gonna be really quick.
Okay.
Speaking of us,
Man, I really like how that salt and pepper is working with you.
Hey, man, I'm trying to age like you. Speaking of us being involved, here's how the law is worded to serve on the board.
Okay.
Trustees shall have demonstrated experience or qualifications in the areas of law, finance, engineering, public transportation, urban planning, logistics, government, architecture, or economic development. Do you think it's fair that low-income residents that depend on public transportation the most don't even qualify to serve on the new board based on the stated qualifications of the subsection?
Well, I'm just looking at this language, so please don't hold anybody to anything that I say about it, but it says members shall have demonstrated experience or qualifications. I don't know that that means every member. or whether it means some members. I don't know that. Certainly it seems like you have to have that representation on the board, but if you have, 27 people on this thing, I'm wondering whether that means that every single person has to meet these qualifications or not. So that's a question.
That's the big question.
Yeah.
It is what it is. Have you, is that answer?
Well, here's the other thing. It is important that people who use this system every day have an opportunity to serve on it. And I've not heard anybody say that's not something that they think is important. So let's see. Is it, the legislation is there. You have an opportunity to hear from your elected officials of how they intend to implement this. And you have an opportunity to share with them what you believe needs to happen. Let's see. And if you don't like the answer, this has to be approved by the voters. So let's see. Give it a chance. Give it a chance.
All right, we have Braxton Winston.
By the way, can I say one more thing before I get to you, Braxton? I watched the New York Knicks against the Indiana Pacers lose a game they were winning by 20 points. And it was kind of like this overhang of like, they're so used to losing, they can't figure out how to win. And part of what I'm trying to get across is, let's imagine winning. Let's really imagine what it would take under even this legislation, which again, is not perfect, but I'm telling you, there is no perfect legislation. So under this legislation, how can we win? There's a way. And it requires us to think about how to win, not how to lose. Yeah.
So sometimes the government needs to raise new revenue, right? You have to raise taxes, or you have to increase fees. And we know that when you do that, you make it more expensive to live in a community, and that's going to create displacement. There's no way around that. But the idea, the promise is that investment will be offset with levels of services. So a 1 cent increase is significant. It equates to a 19-cent property tax increase. It raises a lot of new revenue. It's going to create a lot of displacement in this community. When are the services going to come online that are going to offset the increased costs of living? And what, in your experience, what on the menu of projects will actually get federally funded and over what time period?
It's a great question. It's a big question. I'm going to give you as best answers I can give you. Let me step back for a second. This is not going to be a 30-second answer.
You get 2 minutes.
It's not going to be 2 minutes either. The relationship between housing and transportation has always been very tight. And back in the 1930s, in the wake of the Great Depression, the cities were hollowed out because, the people were poor, they weren't getting as much property tax value, et cetera. And somebody had the bright idea to start creating suburbs. And as they created the suburbs, with, by the way, covenants that said that Black folks couldn't buy property in the suburbs, then they had to figure out how to get people from the suburbs into the city. And so the transportation bill that came about in the 1950s was in large part built on a housing policy that had started in the 1930s and 40s. I mention this because many of the problems we're trying to work through right now have been cast, decades ago. And one of the problems I see in a lot of cities is the increased attention on the urban core, meaning more affluent people moving into the urban core because it's closer to work or it's better things to do, et cetera, has the tendency to raise property values. And it has a tendency to generate like people having to move out farther because that's where cheaper housing is, which ends up being more complex because it's harder to get back into the city to go to work. So you end up having this problem. You see it in city after city around the country. So the questions you're raising are important questions, but here's really the brief answer to the question, which is, this is a transit and roads bill. It is not a whole of the person or the whole of the community bill. And there's still companion work that has to be done by the city council and the county commission to sort of fill in the parts that we're talking about. So how is the land going to be zoned around these improvements? Are there going to be portions of it that are dedicated to low-income housing? Is there going to be more investment in things like the Charlotte Land Trust, which I think is one of the best hopes we have to preserve affordability for many people across this community. So again, this is a project. I mean, taking this on is taking on the project of envisioning this community with all of its various parts having a place to be and a place to be vibrant. So I think it's a bigger question than just the sales tax.
All right, I have a question. So I'm asking from the perspective of a McCrory Heights resident, and asking about the east-west transit that you spoke of earlier, our beloved Gold Line, the little engineer could. And we have low ridership with the Gold Line. However, we don't have supportive elements such as a park and ride. I would love to take my family to, Hornets games or Panthers games, and I want even Mayor Pro Tem, if you could please respond. What does this transit bill mean for supporting facilities for the Gold Line?
So in the options, there are 4 options that are laid out for the system right now. And in all 4 options, there's an option for Gold Line extension, right? Both on the east and then to the west. And so you have the options there, and as the secretary just stated, as we are envisioning how we like for the design of this to roll out, we can fill in the gaps around the services that will substantiate that rail system, right? So I think, the thing about the Blue Line is, you guys did some wonderful work, Secretary, back then around the Blue Line, but you didn't get everything right. And so this is the opportunity for us to learn from some potential missteps or things that could have been done differently with the Blue Line and incorporate that in the other lines as they're built out. So it has the option for us to bake in what we've learned and to envision what is possible in the future.
All right, we have Ms. Corinne Mack, then we have Ms. Carlene Ivory.
Good morning, Secretary Foxx.
Good morning.
I wanted to, Good morning. I wanted to ask you, since you've been all over the country, some of the economic opportunities for marginalized communities, specifically in New York City, Seattle, and I'm going to say LA, and how labor played a big part in ensuring that we created a closer living wage to offset the 1% tax or any other tax increase.
There's looking nationally, a lot of cities have imposed living wages. A lot of times it's with a lot of robust debate about whether to do it and what level. It's just an issue that comes up and communities have to wrestle with it and decide what they want to do with it. it is clear that the cost of living has gone up substantially over the last decade or so. So these are debates that I think, are important debates to have. And by the way, they don't just happen in the public sector, they're happening in the private sector too. There are a lot of companies that have raised their minimum pay because of cost of living issues. So I just think these are, again, things that we have to continue to discuss and debate as a community. Yes,
All right. Now we're going to have a 30-second question from Ms. Carlinia Ivory.
All right.
You can say whatever. Thank you, Corinne, for your question, because mine was on economic development. And Anthony, it is so hard to imagine winning when so many times our folks have lost. I want to be positive. Everyone knows that we need an overhaul in transportation. But we go back to the blue line, and I'm talking about economic development. We did not benefit. When I say we, people who look like me, from that. We did not benefit from that. We have another situation where we just gave $650 million to somebody. And we said we're going to get 27%. And now they went and they hired a firm that doesn't look like me. And we're not benefiting. So all I'm asking, I'm not opposed to the transfers, but I need something in writing. And a councilman talked to me last night and said, we guarantee 70% of us go. I said, I don't trust you, James. I don't trust you. We need it in writing. So what I'm asking is that we have another forum that will give people opportunity, not just 2 seconds, 3 seconds. We need to talk and be educated on
Another forum is what we need.
Right.
All right.
So economic development, that's all.
Economic Development Forum coming soon. Our next
Let me respond though, because this is going to come up a lot, and I understand the question. Let me put it this way. I'm just going to be as real as I can be about it. If you write down, and I'm just going to make you the contractor who's got the business. If we say we're going to put 27% into Carlinia's business to ensure representation in the spend. Mr. Trump's DOJ will begin investigating us, and you will start to see the courts start turning that into a reason to eliminate that contract. So what I'm trying to get across to you is we have to think about this differently in the times that we're in. And the expectations that we have of having things written down in the way that would make us feel comfortable are exactly what this environment are basically trying to make us not do. So it isn't, I think we just have to, figure out a way. That's why I said small business is probably the right vehicle, because that's something that is harder for the courts to argue with, but we have to be small, we have to fit in whatever the category is. But what I'm trying to say is just that I understand what you're saying you want. I just think that it is a legal challenge to get what you want in the kind of certainty that you're looking for.
Congressman Mel White.
Can I just add a little bit to that answer, Ms. Ivory, because I do want to take you back to the bill that I spoke about, 171, that's in the General Assembly now, which is going to do exactly what the Secretary has said. But when we look at minority-owned business and women-owned business, there's a Venn diagram in the middle there where it overlaps with small businesses. Many minority and women-owned businesses are small, not all of them, but many are. And so focusing on small business and supporting our small businesses, investing in small businesses is the way that we can actually write it down legally right, in the state, and it will be covered from an umbrella perspective federally as we stand today. Who knows what's gonna come in the future, but as we stand today, the small business is an area of focus that we can lean into.
Congressman White.
Can I just take a moment to approach this from a more global perspective rather than the details? Most people don't know this, but in 1969, I faced the question of whether to return to Charlotte or go to Atlanta, Georgia, to practice law. In November of 1969, the city of Atlanta had a referendum that is equivalent to where we are right now. And that referendum was defeated. And now, when I go to Atlanta, every time I go, I see all of these roads. I mean, the question here is, are you going to build more roads? Are you going to do something different? The roads are going to get built, you know. And transportation is such a thing that you have to look so far ahead. This is a referendum about the future of this city, this community. And a lot of this is not going to impact, certainly not going to impact me and Harvey Gann. You know, I'm almost 80 years old now. And I'm going to be gone before this line gets built out. But our children and grandchildren will face an entirely different future if we try to make perfect the enemy of good. And I saw that in Atlanta. It took them 25 years after 1969 to get their public transit system back. And remember, Atlanta was built on a platform. Sherman came down and burned down the city. They built the city on the platform. There were already rail lines under the city. We got rail lines running all throughout our city, and we need to start using those rail lines. That's the point I was saying.
No one else can do that. Again.
Sorry, I didn't mean to make a speech.
No. Certain privileges for certain people. That's it. You guys, anybody would like to respond? Okay, we're gonna go to JD.
Oh, they didn't respond.
What they didn't?
Oh, they don't need to. Okay.
Congressman Watt put his foot down. Hello.
Turn your mic on. Help it with the mic.
You got it? Okay. Hi, I'm JD. Nice to meet you. Thanks for being here. I'm running for Charlotte City Council District 5 to represent the East Side. In a city presentation, and a nonprofit just cited it today, that the impact of the sales tax will have a $240 increase on the average household. How does one justify that increase in communities that are already stretched thin and might not be getting rail for the next 30 years?
Well, I mean, I think what Congressman Watt just said is probably the best answer, which is that you're building for something going forward. I mean, in 1998, this community decided that there was a need to improve bus service and there was a need to start building rail transit. And the half-cent sales tax was debated just like we're having this discussion now about a full-cent sales tax. And people invested in it, and what we have today was built out as a result of it. Now, the reason why, and I think fundamentally the question is like, well, why a sales tax? The reason is because a lot of the sales tax is actually paid by people who don't live here. anybody who buys something in the city or in the region is paying that sales tax. So it is a lesser burden on people who live here than it would be if you use, for example, the property tax. Now, the lines, you know, which lines get built in what order and what cost and all that stuff. Well, what you have to think about is, you know, how can a city, in the time that we're in at the level of growth that Charlotte has, how can a city be whole without building a system of rail connectivity? Why is that important? It's important because, look, I drive around the city now, like, I don't know, 15 years ago, it took me 10 minutes to get someplace. Now it takes me 20 minutes. With rail transit, you have the opportunity to have consistent travel times. And that's a big selling part to it. So I think one of the exciting things about this package is the micro transit. That's one of the things I'm really excited about, because if I understand it correctly, and I may not, what the transit system is endeavoring to do is to more or less operate more door-to-door kind of service for people. And that is a pretty interesting concept on top of the rail. So I think you've got a lot here to look at and think about.
I'd just like to add a little bit as well, because, you know, we focus on rail because rail is attractive, right? But rail has a much longer runway than our microtransit system, right? Which will have 19 different areas throughout the city that will have microtransit. Rail is a much longer runway than our bus system. And so we're looking at our 15 most highly populated bus routes and making sure that the scheduling and the timing is A1 on that. So there's investment in that as well. Rail has a much longer runway than infrastructure around bikes and sidewalks and bus stops. And so we have an opportunity, as we're building towards rail, to build out the balance of our transportation system that's multimodal, that will impact you more immediately than 20, 30 years out.
All right, we have State Representative Aisha Dew, then we have Mr. Bobby Drakeford.
I'm gonna keep it brief. I'm gonna do a little baby mail. 171 will most likely be overturned and vetoed by the governor. Almost any of those DEI bills on the state level are not going to be a concern. 10 seconds.
We hope so.
All right.
Oh, what a beautiful Bob. Oh, look at that. All right, Mr. Bobby Drakeford.
Thank you very much. My question relates to, I'd like to know examples of how microtransit and buses create economic quality of life opportunities compared to rail. And also, do we know much about the projected percent of Black votes needed to pass this tax and how that correlates to opportunities for Black neighborhoods and Black business owners? Is it a high correlation or is it low, in your opinion?
Okay. I don't know the breakdown on the last question.
Probably the chamber of commerce.
But one of the things I worried about when I was mayor of Charlotte was I did not want there to be a caste system based on the means of transportation. Meaning, I didn't want the bus system to be for us and the rail system to be for other folks. That was one of the reasons why the gold line is even there. And it's also one of the reasons why the gold line is a streetcar as opposed to a light rail system is because we didn't want to disturb the neighborhood feel of the east and west sides that it traversed. You can dig up a lot by trying to put light rail someplace. The permanence of rail tends to be more of a catalyst for economic development in terms of just new housing stock, new retail, new this and that. The transit system, the bus systems have typically been more about getting people to jobs, work, whatever, and they tend not to have been as much of an economic catalyst, but they're flexible. You can change routes more easily with buses, so systems continue to use those. I don't know the answer to the breakdown of the black voters needed to pass the referendum.
All right, we have a question from Ms. Nancy Carter, then we're going to go to Mr. Ken Combs.
I can bellow. I'm an old teacher.
We have a streaming audience. We need it for the streaming audience.
Thank you. I'm 80. I'm still planting saplings. I'm looking to the future. Will this help if you receive federal, state, and local help if you're building a portion of affordable housing in your development? That portion needs to stay affordable forever. No sunsetting. Can we make that work?
I think it's more of a state and local question. I mean, theoretically, yeah, there are ways to do it. The federal administrations, depending on who's in power, will, sometimes be more supportive of things like that than others. I tend to think that's not going to be a big selling point to the current administration, for example. So I think it's up to the local and the state to figure out how to do that. But I think you're right.
Mr. Combs.
I got 6 questions here, and I'm not going to get to ask one of them. And I'm trying to figure out which one to ask. You said the buses for us, light rail for others. The buses ain't for us that much because a lot of those bus routes have been stricken in terms of the buses going through the neighborhoods. So how do you measure or relate to ridership on the light rail for them versus the ridership on the buses for us?
Yeah, I wasn't saying that, actually. I was saying the opposite of that. Yeah. You want to try another one?
No, he cannot. He cannot try another one. Thank you, Mr. Combs. We will figure it out. Mr. Randback.
I'm just lefty. I just want to go back to what you stated earlier in reference to affordable housing. That term irks my nerves because affordable housing is very different from low-income housing. Can you specify the difference so people understand what we're talking about?
Yeah, for sure. So when I think of affordable housing, this is the Anthony definition of it. It is, more or less 60% and below area median income. And when you get into the very poor, 30% and below income. The problem with making more available housing for 30% and below is a lot of times the rent people can afford don't allow you to keep up with the maintenance of the facility. So you have to blend those income levels with other income levels in order to support the ongoing uses. So the Housing Trust Fund the city has been helping to do this some, but not nearly to the degree, the pace of people who need the housing is outgrowing our ability to sort of meet the needs. So one of the things I had hoped would happen, we passed a voluntary inclusionary zoning ordinance, which was the most aggressive ordinance we could pass under the state law that we have today. My hope had been that when we passed it, that either it would work or it wouldn't work and it would create momentum for there to be action at the state level to allow us to do mandatory inclusionary zoning. And what hasn't happened yet is, we haven't been able to create that momentum at the state level. But I think, again, I'm not discouraged by what I see at the federal level. I'm just gonna kind of interject this. I feel like this is a moment for us to sort of reprogram ourselves to thinking about how do we make this system work. You got a majority on the city council, you got a majority on the county commission. And those two bodies together appoint 24 people to this transit body. I feel like there's some new tools that we can use in the toolbox to try to get things that we need.
Before we go, we have a couple of Roberts. We have Robert, then you're gonna pass the mic behind you to Robert Dawkins when you finish. But I have to acknowledge my sincerest apologies. The Charlotte Regional Business Alliance for giving us breakfast this morning, for sponsoring that. Dr. Wilhelmina Remper, thank you so much. Yeah.
I ain't even getting
right now. All right. And I think it's more left too, so please don't. We gotta take all of that with us. All right, Robert, go ahead.
Good morning and thank you. We're talking about transit, but it seems as if listening to the room, every question ends up going back to housing. So there we go. So my question is this: being from Chicago, being in the Nashville area for several years, since I moved from there 18 years ago here to Charlotte, I see the explosion of the city. That's coming here. What do you propose as a good suggestion so that what happens is when you put transportation, yes ma'am, when you put transportation in an area, that area gets gentrified quickly. What do you suggest that will help as far as transit and housing?
Yeah, that's true. That's absolutely true. Particularly when you're talking about rail transit, it tends to attract more investment. This is again where I think there are tools that have been used to some positive effect, like the pre-zoning of land, and you specify there's going to have to be a certain amount of affordable housing in that area, or low-income housing, maybe as it's been said. You have, we didn't have the Charlotte Land Trust when I was mayor. That's a relatively new thing. But I think that is an enormously powerful tool, because what happens with values, property values, is that the land becomes more expensive. The improvement on the land doesn't necessarily increase as much, but if you can lock in the value of the property before you start to see these investments come in, that allows you to have more permanent affordable housing along these corridors. But the bottom line is that I saw this. I mean, we were already under pressure 15 years ago. We were under pressure 30 years ago. We could see the growth coming, and what was happening was that growth was being concentrated in Southeast Charlotte, and we were starting to see people hopping over the city limits, to take advantage of the airport, to take advantage of the jobs, take advantage of all these other things, but not necessarily living in the core of the city. And so we recognize that this transit system attracts population, it attracts a diverse mix of incomes, a diverse group of people. I don't think that's bad necessarily, but I think in terms of protecting the affordability to the greatest extent possible, we have to use every tool available to us, and in some cases petition the state, because of the way our laws work, for tools that we don't have. So these are things that have to continue to be worked on.
All right, we have.
I just want to add one piece to that, which is about the housing. So, what we know from the Chetty study and the results and all the work that occurred after that is building purely low-income housing by itself, it doesn't really work for social growth and economic growth for those families that are living in that housing. It's better to have a blend of incomes within a neighborhood, within a multifamily housing unit, so that lends to exposure, that lends to advancement, et cetera. So sometimes we might not like the word affordable, but pick whatever word you want, but we know just through data that building a full low-income housing is not really advancing our kids and our families forward. We have to blend it with multi-price point housing.
All right, we're gonna go back to Robert Dawkins, then we're gonna go to former Mayor Jennifer Roberts, and then former all-city running back, Mr. Ricky Hall.
So, Anthony, you've seen this in so many cities. So how microtransit, the subsidy is seriously expensive. So when it gets to be popular, and we've seen some, like the person's paying $220 and the sales tax is paying $50. So when this gets to be popular and hundreds of people are wanting to take microtransit, if our sales tax isn't keeping up, like it's not keeping up already, what happens since it's not permanent? Would those get canceled, or what would happen?
Yeah, this is an imponderable. I mean, look, the Great Recession is the best example I can think of. And the Great Recession, we lost sales tax revenue. You know, I have always been a proponent of regional transit in this area. We had an opportunity at that time to hop over the city limits to go into Concord. But the sales tax revenue had dropped so much that we just couldn't do it. It wasn't available to us. So I've seen examples of where, you know, the fluctuations in the economy impact the delivery of service. That's a reality of the way the sales tax works. Now, I think the question, so if I could turn that question into a suggestion for the authority, it would be to say, all right, so on the capital, so capital is the things that you build, like rail lines, the buses that you buy. So on the capital, you're gonna have a reserve, right? So if there are fluctuations in the sales tax, let's have a reserve so that if the sales tax is lower for some period of time, we know that we can still do the things we said we were gonna do, all right? Maybe there should be an operating reserve so that you can maintain some degree of service levels even with substantial fluctuations. Now, that's just an idea, but you know, this is, the things that you're raising are good questions, but they're questions that can be debated and there are answers that you can come up with that would actually help solve those problems. So that's just one example.
Mayor Roberts?
So this may be more for Mayor Pro Tem than Mayor Emeritus, but you probably have some comments as well. We've been talking a lot about supply. We haven't been talking about demand. And we know that we are not to the ridership levels as we were before COVID. If you remember, Mayor Emeritus, that we had the Clean Air Works, where the business community stepped up and gave incentives to people to ride the bus. They did reduce tickets, et cetera, make the experience better. I'd love to hear what conversations are going on with the business community to help increase demand even before lines get built with what we have now.
Absolutely. Well, first and foremost, I want to thank the business community because our mayor would not be in Raleigh signing this bill without the business community leaning in and leaning their credibility to say, this is something that we need. So the business community members of the CELC, they have advocated for this bill. They've gone to Raleigh and spoken to the House and the Senate to say, our workforce needs this. They need a better transportation system overall. So let's give us the opportunity to invest in it. So I know that personally, some of the big blue chip companies will absolutely utilize that and enforce that as various lines come on board. But also, you know, you have to think about the small businesses as well. And if you get on the blue line every now and then, I do it every now and then, or get on the bus, you see people who work for small business who are getting on and off our rail system. You see them utilizing the bus system. We know that the East Side is a job desert, but if we could build out transportation infrastructure that's multimodal, can we attract companies to build outposts there? Perhaps. So then the East Side residents don't have to travel across the city in order to get a good paying job.
Mr. Ricky Hall.
Yes, thank you. This question is for Secretary. Given your experience,
Please, Mr. Hall, put the mic up.
Given your experience across the country, what are some of the best stay-in-place or anti-displacement models that Charlotte should consider emulating?
Yeah, it's a great question. You have some of those models already. You have, I mean, the land trust is relatively new. I know I keep saying this, but that is a very valuable tool, and it could be expanded. You have tools that we don't have available to us that would be helpful tools. Mandatory inclusionary zoning would be probably at the top of that list. But under the Dillon rule that we apply in North Carolina, you can only impose things that the state legislature gives you the power to do it. And we don't currently have that power at the local level. More to the point, it would be great if we could have a stronger tax abatement system in the state that would allow us to do more for people at the lowest income level. So, but all that said, I think we just have to use all the tools available to us. You know, pre-zoning property, because we know this property is going to be on demand along these rail lines. So say at the very beginning that a certain percentage of it has to be dedicated to affordable housing. And in that way, developers will have to do that. So these are things that I think that can be done.
We have Mayor Harvey Gantt, then we have a question from an online viewer.
I can't do this.
Jay, turn the mic on, Jay.
Full disclosure, I had some involvement in this whole thing, and I can't ask this question, actually it's not a question, in 30 seconds, but I'm going to do the best I can. I was a part of the task force, chaired the task force that's responsible for this discussion this morning. The 1 cent sales tax, 1 cent for mobility. And what I keep imagining, listening to this conversation, is first of all, I'm encouraged by all the people who brought various kinds of perspectives to this. Affordable housing, displacement, alternatives. And what I keep going back to is, keep imagining, what happens if we don't pass this? Perhaps what happens if we don't pass this 1 cent sales tax referendum?
We could pass the quarter cents we already got and do the budget.
Braxton, we can come up with all the different reasons. No, you answered it. He says we can pass a 1/4 cent sales tax. We can raise less money. But that's not going to get us where we want to go. I'm not even sure a 1 cent sales tax will get us where we want to go. But we got to go somewhere. We've got to go somewhere. And it's not going to be perfect. What I'm most encouraged by is the fact that a lot of the questions raised have to do with what's going to happen to the people at the bottom of the economic ladder. And that's where the public sector has to come in. I'm encouraged by the fact that 2 people up there of color have been serving in our local government, and we probably got a majority of county and city officials that come from our community. We ought to be pushing them to the brink to deal with all the problems that are going to be there. But this city brings in, what, 150 people a day? We're going to strangle on our own gas fumes. And you're going to say, let's turn this referendum down now and get back to it maybe 5, 10 years from now. That can't happen, folks. We've got to solve the problem. We've got to solve the problems that may be in aid to building a better transportation system. But what I'm looking at is that there is going to be better access to the jobs that will come in this community, so that people can get to better jobs, and we can pay livable wages, and we will have fewer people. Poor we will have with us always, but the same poor people ought not be with us always. That's right. Not the same poor people. And we can find a way to lift people up. We've got to think much more positively and not always get hung up on the fact that the same poor people are going to be poor forever. We can do something about that. We can do something about that today. But what's the alternative, folks, if we turn this referendum down? Answer that for me.
So seriously, no one else. Congressman White, Mayor Harper, that's it. Thank you. All right, so we have a question from an online viewer. Her name is Anitra, and she is a Charlotte native and South Charlotte resident. Excuse me, phone. So Anitra asks, the problem needs to be solved is the lack of reliable public transportation on the southern end of the South Triangle corridor. Is there a plan to extend light rail or any other modes of transportation to include more stops in this growing area?
So I don't know exactly where she lives on the southern end, but of course as a part of the plan, again, there are 4 options currently that are on the table that right now the MTC is looking at. But ultimately, the Transit Authority will make the decision upon, and you do have some Blue Line extension, of course, and you have some extension into the Valentine area. But I'm not sure exactly where she lives on the south side, but you will have that in addition to the extension of the bus lines.
Okay, so you said, okay, Tryon. Did I say South Tryon? I guess that's that Airsley area.
Yeah. So you're going southbound, South Tryon. The closest would be the Blue Line, Still Creek. Yeah, so the closest would be the Blue Line, but also bus extension as well. The other thing I wanted to say is we actually have packets here that highlight from a city council perspective, district by district, as well as a county commission district by district layout of what's going to change in your area for you. So what's in it for, my residents of District 1, we have a one-pager where you can see what new proposed bus lines will be there, what new proposed rail lines would be there, as well as the micro transit areas. So based on where you live, there is public information that you can access right now in a one-page form that will let you know potentially what can change in your area.
Thank you. We got a question from good old Aunt Mary.
All right.
Well, I'm gonna break the rule. It's really not a question. I just wanted to say that when I look at this, I'm not thinking about myself. I'm thinking about my children, my children's children, and the future. That's what I'm thinking about, because this is not gonna be an immediate thing. And people in the past, back in the 50s, they did things that they never saw. They voted for things that they never saw. But we are enjoying the fruits of their labor and the things that they set forth. They knew that they weren't going to live to see things. So I think we need to look at it I know it's time. But I think we need to look at it in that perspective for the future of our children.
Thank you, Ms. Mary. We have a question from Jamie. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you said that wasn't a question. All right, please.
I agree. I agree with that. I mean, I think a lot's been said. I'll just say it again. I would take the hand that this community has over any city in the country. That's really what I would say. You have the opportunity to choose a future that will, you're going to have traffic pretty much no matter what, but the traffic you're going to have without this 1 cent is going to be exponential. And the opportunity that your children will have to live in a city that they can move around in freely, using a variety of means is unparalleled. So again, the things to look out for are just being vigilant. about how this system gets built out. And that's on all of us. I include myself on it.
I just want to add to what the secretary said earlier, just given the climate nationally and also what's going on at our state level, it really is a miracle that we're sitting here with the ability to make this decision to invest in ourselves. That's amazing. Given that it's 2025, we operate in a Dillon state, and given what's going on at the national and state level. And so that didn't happen by happenstance, right? It just didn't pop up one day. There's been a lot of work and investment into making that happen. Now the real work then begins. If the residents say, yes, we would allow this referendum, then it's really about how do you shape it? How do you add the dimension to the framework of the legislation so that it comes to life in our city the way that we would like for it to come to life? That's where the real work will begin. But I love, Secretary, your comment about, the Knicks and the Pacers, because it really is. It's a mentality switch. If we're not used to winning, if we're not used to being in the driver's seat, it's a pivot to think about how we can be masters of our own fate here and not allow ourselves to choke on our own growth. Because the message is out. Charlotte's a wonderful city. We have 100 plus people moving here daily. We need to make sure we're in control of our growth and our destiny.
All right, before we go to Jason, let me make mention that Secretary Foxx has agreed to stay. We can push this to 11 a.m. Mayor Pro Tem, I did not ask you, but if you're available, we'd love to have you. Okay, all right, we got a question from Jason, then Maggie, then Mayor Pro Tem Altman, Commissioner Altman, and Jamie. I'm sorry, Jason, Jamie, Maggie, Commissioner Altman. Chase.
Yeah.
Oh, I was trying to look.
That means I get an extra 5 seconds. Thank you. So, no, I actually wrote this question down. Good morning to Mr. Foxx. My question is, after the current Democratic primary in New York, it seems that progressive policies around transportation, such as free bus fares, expanding priority lanes, are popular. Do you think a Zohran Mamdani win will have a bigger implication for the country? And if this policy is successful, what do you think that could look like in the South?
Young Chase.
Okay, Chase. Congratulations on graduating high school, by the way. I think if you look at the demographics of the country, the boomers for a long time were the largest group that we had. The millennials are now the largest group. And I think, if anything, what Mamdani represents is a changing of the guard in a certain way. And young people are going to start moving rapidly into positions of leadership, not just in New York, but around the country. That's just going to happen. They're going to bring new ideas. They're going to bring different ways of thinking about stuff. It's going to challenge a lot of the ways that we think about things. And I think that's healthy. I mean, people ask me sometimes, like, why did you do 2 terms? And, and the thing about it is that I think I've always thought you lead and then you get out of the way so that a new generation can come and lead. And I've never felt any guilt or any shame about doing that, because I know there are people who can come behind me who can lead it just as well, if not better. That's good advice for national politicians to follow too.
All right. My apologies, young Chase. Now we have a question from, where's the mic? Congressman Mel White.
Actually, I was going to give an answer to an earlier question about the composition of the authority. It seems to me that anybody who has ever ridden a bus has experience of the kind that's described in the requirements. So for the city council members or county commission members who are appointing them, that's a given.
Hey, Gary, it's Jamie. Jamie, then Maggie, then Commissioner Altman. Jamie, Maggie, Altman.
Love and peace, family. Jamie, Advanced Carolina, North Carolina Black Alliance. And I'm just inspired and motivated by the room from Mel Watson and Mount Olive as a child speaking, Braxton 2016 protest with them, to our new representatives here, just inspired by the power that's here. And my question is for the youth. I was fortunate and took the public transportation and the bus routes, but for today's youth, what will motivate them or connect them to public transportation versus other Lyft or other apps that are available? How are we connecting that out?
I think the main thing for young people, there's a lot of information now about just affordability. A lot of young people are just, on the parents' couch because they're still trying to figure out how to get out to the workforce and the opportunities. And, transportation for a lot of people is more than 30% of what they spend their money on. And the more you go up on the percentage of your income, the more of a challenge it is to do other things that you want to do. So I think one of the main reasons to get involved in this and to support it is because the more access points you have to an integrated transit network, the more opportunities you have to utilize that network, frankly, at a fairly high subsidization rate relative to owning a car or some other thing. A car is a huge expense. You don't have to own a car, and you can travel by transit, $2.20 a trip. That's not a bad deal. And gas isn't going to keep going down. It's going to go up.
All right, Maggie.
Good morning, Maddie Bear. Thank you, Secretary Foxx, for your public service in various contexts. I'd like to ask you to draw on your private sector experience in the transportation industry and discuss what ways the private sector, in addition to what's already been talked about in terms of the local business community, can be a partnership and provide additional options as we move forward, as we cycle from the shorter-term solutions to long-term rail solutions.
There are a lot of ways. I mean, I think what's being discussed here with microtransit, for example, is an opportunity. There may be some aspects of microtransit that the I don't know what you're going to call this thing. I don't know if it's going to be cats or it's going to be cats. Okay, all right. So there are probably ways that partnership can happen there. I think what has already been raised in terms of the local business community incentivizing people to use the transit system is also another important connection point. Where you're going to get into some challenge with organizations like Lyft and Uber and those types of things is data. They're going to want to have access to data about where people are going and various things, and the governments typically have been very zealously controlling of that information for obvious reasons. So maybe there's a way to create partnerships there, but I think it's mostly in the microtransit arena and in the arena of trying to incentivize people to come in. I'm going to say one more thing about the private sector. Our community has thrived on public-private partnerships. And that has been a very strong part of how Charlotte has evolved. As this bill is being signed, I'm sure there are people all across this region who are trying to imagine how they can benefit from this sales tax being passed. And I think it needs to be said, and I'll say it, that we have to do this differently than we've done it before. Meaning that we have to have more diverse people at the table, not just the table of decision-making within the authority, but at the table in terms of where those opportunities come from. And so I'm saying this to my friends in the real estate development community. Open up the door, because there are a lot of people who want to come in and participate in the private sector opportunities that arise as a result of this. And that's not a bad thing. Yeah.
Just want to add a little bit of dimension to that. We have currently, for our microtransit, we have one area that's up and running now, effectively as a pilot, right? But the operator of that microtransit area happens to be an African-American woman who we're partnering with, right? And so that's a connection right there. If you can think of the multiplier effect of, we currently have proposed 19 different microtransit areas, but think about that as a multiplier effect, and who, from a small business perspective and others, can undergird that and tap into those dollars.
All right, we have Commissioner Altman, then we have Ms. Jackie Edwards-Walton, Mr. Braxton Winston, then Mr. Ken Coons.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Lee Altman. I'm an at-large county commissioner, and I also serve on the Metropolitan Transit Commission. I'm going to try to hit 6 points real fast just for information. First of all, I want to salute our partners in the city. Y'all, they pried open a window that had been shut for this community for decades. It is a moment to celebrate and seize with both hands. And I thank them for the work that they have done in concert with our partners in the business community. The Leading on Opportunity Task Force identified our transit system as a major impediment to upward economic mobility. Other things like universal access to pre-K, affordable housing, we made progress on. We have not made progress on transportation. And it's not because our partners in CATS don't do their job well. I think they're doing a great job, but they don't have enough resources to improve what we have today at all, because the half-cent sales tax is basically fully allocated. Right now, there is one bus route in Charlotte-Mecklenburg that has 15-minute headways. Mayor Roberts asked why we don't have enough ridership. I'm sorry, Joy. Okay. We don't have enough ridership. What about ridership? We need more frequency in order to support more ridership, but we can't get more frequency without more resources. So this is a chicken and egg problem, which we need to act in order to remedy. When and if we can implement this, you will be able to get, if you are in one of the 18 denser areas for the microtransit zones, you will be able to use your phone like an Uber app and call microtransit to your house, get shuttled to the grocery store or the church or the bus line or the rail line that you need to get, and you can cross the whole county for $2.20. And if you're a senior or a young person, it's $1.10. And a lot of these benefits can be rolled out overnight, the rail and the microtransit, not overnight, but in very short order, which will deliver a very quick relief to our residents. And thank you.
The thing is, you can come back. We want you here. Please, Commissioner Altman, please come back. We're here every Tuesday. Ms. Jackie, then we have Braxton Winston, then Mr. Combs.
Related to the county, the new county manager will be here next Tuesday. My question has to do with, somewhat related to transit and housing, is purchasing land along the lines ahead of time, when it looks like we will always be behind in doing that. And the question that Bobby Drakeford asked about, could the Alliance, could they get back with us about the percentage of African Americans needed to pass bonds? And I think you said CELC, Executive Leadership Council. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Well, if I can use the term, the trump card that local government has is zoning. Yeah, you might own the land, but what you can do with that land is prescribed by the zoning. And that's what we've been talking about, is using that to ensure that you're getting some degree of affordability in the lines. This has been debated for a long time, so there are probably a lot of people who have already jumped in to just acquire property along these corridors with the expectation that maybe it'll eventually happen. So I don't know what to do about the purchasing. Yeah, but by the way, you have not aged one day since I saw you. I'll tell you that, right?
Rex. So it seems like as a community, we're doing a lot of defending of the need for transit and transportation. I think we all could agree that we need transit and transportation, right? And so I want to get beyond that. The question is this bill, is approving this bill going to get us what we want, or is it going to be, or what are the pitfalls, what are the sand traps in this, right? Like if you're dying of thirst, if you haven't had anything to drink in 3-4 days, somebody hands you a gallon of milk, it might bring some relief, but it ain't really what you need. So I think we need, as a community, to see how if this approves, how do we navigate those sand traps? Like you talk about being approachable, but the MTC is currently made up of elected officials. That is very difficult to navigate.
Right.
How do we deal with things like an appointed board to hold it accountable? So these
All right,
things
Mr.
actually-
Winston.
Excuse me,
Thank
we
you.
don't, Mr. Winston, we don't do that here. We don't. We're respectful.
Security had to come out.
No, it's a fair question. I mean, I think if I'm understanding the question, is if we could get from whether to how.
Yeah.
How do you go about answering some of the questions that we've been talking about in the environment where this is law and it's passed, right? Is that what you're asking?
We have no debate over that.
Yeah, but this is what I'm gonna say about it. Depending on, it's a funny thing to say, where you stand depends on where you sit. So if, I graduated from Davidson, so I'll pick Davidson. If I lived in Davidson, right, yeah. I live in Davidson, I'm thinking the red line's a pretty good idea, right? If I'm living in, or if I travel a lot, and I like to have rail access to the airport, I'm probably thinking that line's a pretty good idea. Everybody can see a little something that they want in this whole thing. And everybody's gonna want their thing first. And not everybody's gonna get their thing first. And the whole thing is like, the buying into this referendum is sort of buying into the idea that there's a vision and that we have to be active participants in making that vision happen. That we can't relax. I'm not telling you to relax. I'm not telling you not to be concerned. I think Mayor Gantz sort of spoke to this. A lot of things people are talking about are legitimate issues to be discussed and debated. But they're not going to be resolved before this referendum is put to a vote. They're going to be debated and litigated as we are actually implementing this system. So our engagement is that's the way you solve for this. That's how you get to the how. Again, who's going to be on this authority? That's an important question. Who's going to chair the authority? You have 27 people, my experience at least, you get a lot of people on something, it really means that everybody's got to vote, but somebody's going to be thinking about this stuff more than everybody else. So who are those people going to be? Who's going to run the system? Who's going to be the CEO of the system? Who's going to, determine which lines get built and who gets the contract? I mean, all these things are things that we should be working on, but they're not going to get answered today. But if you don't do it, we know what's going to happen. That 20-minute trip you took today is going to be 40 minutes 10 years from now. Your children and your grandchildren are going to feel that. So I think the choice I'm voting for this. I am voting for, I tell you right now, I'm voting for it. I'm a yes. I'm a yes for this. But I'm also a yes for staying actively engaged in making sure the things that I most care about don't get put on the sideline. And that's what I think we all have to do. I'm up to my time.
All right.
I just want to add one quick point to this, which is, you know, we have the 17th Secretary of Transportation sitting in front of us saying he's been to all 50 states. He hasn't seen a perfect system. This was his role. He has not seen a perfect system. So again, we can't allow perfection to hold us back from progress. Let's harness that energy into how we can get it done, leveraging the best of everything that he's seen throughout our country, and maybe some international inputs too, to help get this done. But I think that's the most important thing. You have an expert sitting here saying, never seen a perfect system. Don't expect our system to be perfect. Let's make it the best system we possibly can by harnessing all of the energy and the intellect and experience that we have in our community.
Let me just put it this way. Also, I want to build on this. There's a lot of discussion about affordable housing here. Does anybody know anybody in Davidson who's interested in affordable housing, who wants to serve on this authority? Probably ought to get to know some people. Because the interest might be the same. It just might be the person is sitting in a different place, right? So this is it's an opportunity. One of the exciting things about this is it's an opportunity. I mentioned Detroit before. Detroit, their system, I couldn't say this when I was in administration, but I would never want to have a system like they've got in Detroit. Because it is balkanized. It's the city, and then it's every place else. You don't want that, because the jobs don't recognize those lines. Your quality of life doesn't recognize those lines. You have an opportunity to build something with the region. So finding areas of alignment and interest is not quite as hard as you might think it is. What's hard is when you have to get into choices, like choices where you have to do one thing versus something else. But again, we're talking about how to exercise political power. And there's more political power in this room and in this community with this sales tax in place than has ever been in place for transit in this community. That's why it's an exciting time to be here. I'm telling you, there's a book, Howard Thurman wrote a book called Deep is the Hunger. I'm sorry, I'm gonna get off on us sort of sidetrack, so I'm gonna take another 30 seconds. And he describes this deer. When it's an adolescent, it smells something and it starts running, and it runs and runs and runs until it runs out of energy, and it finally falls onto the ground. And then it realizes that the smell it smelled was coming from itself. Now I'm using that as a metaphor to say this. Don't let us be our own problem in trying to solve for this. I know that there's been a lot of disappointment over decades about transportation in this community. I live in an area that was bisected by 2 freeways, and there was a third not too far away, 16. But transit offers a different idea for connection. It offers an idea that says it's going to be additive. And we've seen the benefits of it in different parts of the city. So it's not a hard question to me. I realize I'm one person, but based on what I have seen, it's not a hard question to me.
All right, so we have Mr. Combs, Representative Duke, Gary, Robert, and then I'm going to scan for a last call. So if you got one, go ahead. Work up the courage to ask it. Mr. Combs.
I'm the dinosaur in the room when it comes to chronicling of times. And as the dinosaur in this room, I've been chronicling since '69, and there are two areas that I want to suggest that you refer to. One, the Uptown Arena growth, which was initially presented by Mayor Harvey Gantt. Business interests said, no, we need to develop Tyvola Road, and the local business interests won out. And once they had achieved what they set out to achieve, it was then a matter of bringing us back to downtown. And thank you, Harvey, for having the vision, but an entity that rejected your vision.
Okay, question.
I said from the outset, I don't think I've got a question, but it's a chronicle of time.
Another.
I want them to come and we'll do a podcast about this whole entity, because this is an exciting time.
Don't forget to hit subscribe. We're gonna go to Representative Aisha.
Just a point of recognition and celebration, and that is the governor has now signed the PAVE Act into law. So I know we have a lot to discuss, but it's a good moment to celebrate.
Oh, well, there we go. Give them go home.
All right.
Gary.
Recently, a few of us had the pleasure and the honor to meet with the mayor and some of her leadership team and the city manager about this particular project. And I think one of the things that constantly came up and still comes to this day, and you touched on it, is the order. How do we decide what size of towns get this add-on first and foremost? So from a strategic standpoint, because I know you don't know right now, it's convoluted, but from your experience, how do you strategically see that approach to decide what size of town should proceed the order to get this transit?
Yeah, it's going to be complicated in operation, because let me put it this way: when the Blue Line was built, there was sort of an idea that, okay, the region, meaning the surrounding towns, were contributing to the sales tax, and they were investing in an asset that was just in the city of Charlotte. Then we did the Blue Line extension, and for reasons that I said, we weren't able to jump across into Cabarrus County, so that was another line that was just in Charlotte. And so, and then we did the first segment of the streetcar, and a lot of people were saying, oh, the city has jumped the line on the sequencing. And so I think the fact that, as I remember, this legislation indicates that the red line has to be
At least 50% done.
at least 50% done. So we know what the first line is going to be. To me, that's just an indication that they wanted to make sure that line got done as a measure of starting the process of getting something beyond the city of Charlotte. Now, in any kind of situation, like you got all these different interests, you're going to have to give and get, right? So there are going to be some areas where maybe some things are delayed that you would like to see happen first, and some things are accelerated that you would like to see first. It's just a question of how that all gets litigated out. So, you look at a place like Denver. I would look at Denver. I would look at San Diego as places that have gotten regional systems that have been, I would say, in the main, received relatively well, at least at the outset. There's more debates happening now. But you look at every single one of these regional systems that are being developed around the country, and there's a lot of warts on all of them because of this very thing. It's not the building of the lines is easy. It's deciding that's hard. And I would not expect to get 100% of what you want when you want it. That's just the way it's going to be. But I would expect you to get 50% of what you want or whatever, But, I think on affordable housing, I think there are a lot of interests across the region in affordability. And you can probably find some alignment on that issue with people who come from these different towns. So just don't think about the city people. Think about the people in the surrounding towns who are gonna be on this board.
Aunt Mary, he's not listening.
All
Oh, I'm sorry.
All right, we got a question from Mr. Robert Dawkins.
All right, and again, I want to thank you again, Anthony. I always love being in presence and talking to you. You made a real point today of saying, don't let perfect be the deciding factor. So for all of us that are community activists that also don't want to leave this earth saying we helped ask poor people to pay for their displacement, what would be the determining factors and how much time would this go before we should be calling for repeal?
Well, I think if we have this implemented, I would say we're starting from a good place. Because if you're asking that question, it suggests to me that you kind of made at least some intellectual leap to the point where this thing is actually passed. I would not go into it with the expectation of failure. I think there needs to be a real strategy around how to make it as much of a success as it can be. And that means building coalitions. I mean, the way this thing is designed with 27 people on it, no one part of it is going to be dominant. You have 10 from the city, 12 from the county, and all the ones, as I understand it, from the county have to be from the region. Then you get 3 that are appointed, one by the governor, one by the Senate leader, and one by the House leader. So the way this board is going to work, it's going to work based on coalitions. And it's going to be necessary for people to horse trade on things that they care about. And, you know, making sure you have good people on that board, I think is incredibly important. And that is a direct connection to your county commission and to your city council and who they put on. So I'd be thinking about that, like right now. And recognize that this is going to be a real commitment. You know, this isn't going to be like serving on, you know, Keep Charlotte Beautiful. You know, this is, I mean, not they do great work. They do great work. Special aspersions on Keep Charlotte Beautiful. But there's a lot of technical stuff involved here. And you have to have people on there who want to dig into the details so that they can be effective in doing it. So I guess what I'm saying is, I would be thinking about how to set this up so that it has maximum capacity to be all that it can be for this community. And I wouldn't begin with the idea of like, okay, we got 4 downs and we're gonna punt on 2nd down. I would start thinking about like, let's play this all the way out. Because I think when you play it all the way out, it ends up being much better for us than it would be otherwise.
Shout out to the keepers of the tree line.
Yeah, absolutely.
We have Robert, then Commissioner Lee Altman again, Maggie, and the gentleman who just stood up and handed the mic over. And again, I got room for 2 more questions. So again, last call. Go ahead, Robert.
Thank you again. So, what I was thinking here is, and this plan is for 30 years. In 30 years, most of us are going to be old as heck or gone. Just the truth. And so, I'm thinking about my children who are 10 years old, 18 years old, 12 years old. What area would you suggest is going to be the new upcoming area to have my children look forward to moving to or to invest in?
I mean, where are you now?
University area.
University area. I mean, I'm biased, but I think the west and east sides are going to be extremely strong in the future. I really do. There's been a lack of building in Southeast Charlotte. some less, but some in the university area over time. I'm the type of person, I want to be close in. I want to be close in to the central business district. I want to be close to the things that I care about. I mean, I'm faithfully, just chronic Panthers fan. It's a tough thing to be. But, I want to be close to things that I like to go do. The good news is that, there's still a lot of areas close in where there's a lot of diversity, income-wise and in terms of people. And I think holding on to that to the extent that we can is going to be really good for the city. I mean, that's the other exciting thing about this is that I can point to a lot of cities that have hollowed out its black population. That's happened a lot. And I don't think that has to be the story here. I think we can have our cake and eat it too. We can have transit and we can also preserve the livability of our areas. So that's what I think.
So 2 points for you. One is I would really direct you to our community area planning process that's going on right now. There's an opportunity to provide feedback into those plans, and there are 14 different areas throughout the city of Charlotte. So when you think about forward growth, how you can impact that growth, the community area plans are a great way to do so. And then the other piece I'll tell you is just off land use alone. If you look at our zoning meetings and you see district by district or in ETJ where you're seeing the most rezonings and activities, it's clear that District 3 is a booming growth area for the city of Charlotte, as well as other areas. But you see a lot of growth there. So, when you're thinking about your kids and future planning, I always like to utilize the Wayne Gretzky rule, right? And so they asked Wayne Gretzky, how did he become such a great hockey player? And he said, it's simple, because I skate to where the puck is going, not to where the puck is at, right? And that's what we need to do here, right? Overall, as we're looking at this transportation plan, which is going to be interlocked with the community areas, right? And our growth and our job centers. So we, as a community, need to skate to where the puck is going, not being sort of unilaterally thinking about where the puck is right now today in 2025.
We have Shakara Harbin of CRVA in the building. I want you to please take note that Secretary Foxx just told us how bright the future is for the west side of Charlotte, that baseball corridor. So please go out and tell the world so they will know about this illustrious side of town. All right, Commissioner Altman.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Your question is awesome, and I really encourage everybody in here, get the map from the back before you leave so that you can see in your area what bus, rail, or road improvements are coming for your neighborhood. So you can talk to the people around you in an informed way about the actual benefits that are going to come to university or wherever you may be in the county. I mentioned that right now we have one bus route that has 15-minute headways in all of Mecklenburg County, 6 towns and the city of Charlotte, ETJ, one route. This build out of our bus system will expand access, our bus, rail, and roads will expand access to 450,000 residents.
You have a quick question.
No, I just wanted to provide information. And the last thing I just want to say real fast is ask yourself the day after the election on November 5th or 6th or whatever it is, if this were to be defeated, where would we be? And the answer is back to square zero. Okay.
All right, we have Maggie, then we have James, and I believe that will close us out. The microphone is coming.
Can I react to this?
Absolutely.
The reaction I have is when I was secretary, we had a situation in Minneapolis where a line had been proposed, and there were 4 stops along this line that were in jeopardy because of funding. And the local community decided to eliminate one of the stops, which happened to be the one stop that was in the black part of Minneapolis. And our department said, we're not funding those other 3 stops unless you include that 4th stop.
That's right, yeah.
We don't have that Department of Transportation today. And so what I've been trying to say in lots of different ways is that this is going to be a line by line, stop by stop, community by community set of work. And I don't want to sugarcoat how hard it is, because there will be choices that have to be made along the way. And the map is a vision, but presumably this authority will have to endorse that vision and will have to abide by that vision however it is articulated. And what I'm reminded of is when I was transitioning into the role of mayor in 2009, after we had gone through a referendum to repeal, the referendum that was on the ballot to repeal the half-cent sales tax. I was sitting there, and I'm not going to get into the ins and outs of this conversation, but basically, what was said to me was that the streetcar was put into the plan to help get the support of the Black community without a clear intention to build it. And that was the moment I decided we were going to have a streetcar. Now, I'm saying to you this, that we are responsible for getting this vision through. And we can do it. There is more power today, political power in this community, than has ever been. We can do it. But do not export the expectations you have. Hold those expectations and hold people accountable for them. That's the work. And it can happen. I've seen it happen in community after community. So anyway, there you go.
All right, Maggie, the gentleman in the sports coat in the back, then James.
This is more of a suggestion than a question, and that is, this is lovely, this great big book, but how many of us are going to read it? And that's not going to do anything to get out the vote and support. Challenging those who are not of the dinosaur generation to see what kinds of technology could be used to give voters a sense of what it's going to take, what's going to happen if you don't put this bill in place. You talked about the 40-minute commute happening. Some way that somebody can visualize that in a 10-second Instagram or whatever technology is doing these days.
Thank you. What's your name?
Sam.
Sam. All right.
No worries. Sam Spencer, just a humble Oak Lawn resident. So I had a quick question. I'm going to answer Bobby's question. So whenever we have a transit referendum or any sort of referendum in an odd numbered year in the general election, historically that is when Black voters in Charlotte have the least amount of power because they're the smallest amount of the electorate. And for me, that is often a real problem when we have when we're making that decision and we are not having a more diverse electorate like we do during either odd or even number primary elections or during an even number general election year. Additionally, the city of Charlotte has not successfully passed a sales tax referendum, or the county of Mecklenburg has not successfully passed a sales tax referendum since the 1990s. So, how do we come together and do this differently than we have in years before, given those challenges?
It's a question. I think I think it comes down to the communities themselves. You know, all the communities in this county are gonna be part of this. And the way it's gonna work in practice, as I said before, is gonna be through a lot of coalitions that happen within the authority and beyond the authority. So just as an example, what if there were groups of community members throughout all of these different jurisdictions who said, affordable housing is a critical element of this, and we want to put some real energy behind ensuring that it's a part of how these lines are built. That's one example. I think there's also the sort of external element of the, you know, sort of what happens, who gets the opportunities to build along these lines. That's come up as well, and that again, you know, if I were in the business community right now in Charlotte, I would be thinking about how to have the most diverse group of people involved in building along these lines as possible, and be very, very out front about that. Not because they necessarily have to do it, given how the law is working today, but because it represents to this community that this entire project is going to include everybody. That's something that could be done today. So I think all of us have to kind of reprogram ourselves and think about how we're going to do this all very differently. And I think you're right, this has to be done differently than it's been done before.
All right, James, last question.
Hey, thank you. Anthony was having in class of '88. Anthony, you know, growing up off the Ford, that we have a lot of people.
It's the Ford now.
Yeah, it's the Ford. It's the Ford. You need to come visit.
Not nations, babies.
Yeah.
There's a difference.
Yes. Yeah. So we still have a lot of people off the board who do not historically vote. And just all truth and honesty, people in this room are not going to pass this referendum on their own. What can we do to reach back in order to get the people off the Ford in those other areas that normally are not excited about voting, to get them excited about voting for this referendum?
It's a real great question. If I had that question, I might be in the White House now. I think the worst thing that can happen is that we lose hope. And I think there are a lot of people who, in some way, shape, or form, have lost some degree of hope in the political process to serve them. Now, the best way to answer that is for the political process to serve them, right? And for people to see the fruits of what a good political process can yield them. It's harder today, I would say, than it was even a year ago. Because what we fear more today is that things will be taken away more than they will be conferred to people. You know, there's a so-called big, beautiful bill being discussed in Washington right now that I think is going to be a real challenge for a lot of people at the margins that may reinforce the very thing we're talking about. So I think what we have to do is we have to, you know, I think the elected officials who are here, as they're trying to work on things like affordable housing, as they're trying to work on the transportation plans and various things, I think you have to kind of like, you have to really help people understand what their government has been doing for them, and hope that they will take you up on the opportunity to continue to be involved. But I don't have a magic answer. But you know, I maybe close with this, since this is the last question. I was fortunate to grow up off the Ford. It's funny, people say the Ford, WC, like, you know, I was used to saying WC anyway. It's all kind of different. now. But 2 houses down was Pop Miller, who was a principal of East Mecklenburg. And 2 houses on the other side was John Davis, who was his assistant principal in West Charlotte. So I couldn't really do anything wrong. And next door was Robert Belton, who was a former lawyer who practiced with Mel Watt, worked on employment cases. And I felt like I wasn't part of the generation that marched and demonstrated and created all the things that I had the benefit of. But I knew that generation was there, and sometimes I got a chance to talk to them. And what I gleaned from that was that, yeah, they struggled mightily to create the opportunities that I took for granted. And I think to myself every single day, when I look at my children, I think about this every single day when I look at Chase, or when I look at young people, is what am I doing to create the opportunities for that next generation? It's a continuum. And yeah, we're still fighting. And by the way, we got people that say that we shouldn't have anything. And they're trying to destroy the idea of a country that includes everybody. So, I take that very seriously, but I take it as a challenge too. And that's the challenge that I've been trying to sort of enforce here, which is everybody's asking, what can they do, what can they do? What you can do is you can make this system a good system. You can make it a system that works for people. You can make it a system that doesn't do what many systems do around the country, which is to promote some interests above others. You can make it an equitable system. But that's up to us. Pass the referendum. But don't relax. Don't set it and forget it. It's day to day, line to line, stop to stop, driver to driver, brick by brick. That's what it's going to be. And it's a challenge to us. And by the way, if we do this well, guess what? We've exercised some muscles that allow us to practice democracy well, more broadly, to show the country that some place can actually figure out how people can live together in a region. So I just think it's an opportunity for this region to demonstrate some things to this country that this country needs to see.
Before Mayor Pro Tem, would you have any closing thoughts you would like to add?
Well, I think the secretary just did an amazing job of closing it out. You know, I really want us to understand that we are building a system for our nieces and nephews and sons and daughters and children. This is the future of Charlotte. And yes, we'll be able to feel the impact of some of it, but ultimately we are thinking about the future of Charlotte. And I believe there was a comment earlier around someone saying, hey, I wanted to have the opportunity to do some of the same things my parents did in order to shape the future for me. And that's where we're at. And I certainly know just the leaders in the room, and certainly the secretary here and everything he's done, but I know that Charlotte does not shrink when it comes to a challenge. We don't shrink. We stand up, we have our athletic stance, and we will go to work. And we'll continue to do that with this amazing opportunity that we have now, which is to educate our residents around why this referendum should be passed. And so, again, we celebrate, very happy that the governor signed the bill, but the heavy lifting is just now beginning. Right? So we'll take a moment and exhale and say, wow, this is awesome, an awesome moment. But we got to wake up ready to go to work tomorrow.
Mr. Secretary, we have a problem and have to step out. Okay. Thank you. Good to see you.
All right, Mary, you be safe out there. Ladies and gentlemen, please a round of applause for our esteemed panel. Mayor Pro Tem Dante Nicholson from Southside Homes and Bill Brooks Home, former Secretary of Transportation, Mr. Anthony Foxx. Southwest, Northwest, all Charlotte. Join us next week. We have another amazing presenter, and they will be incredible. I forgot who it was that quickly. But trust me. Yes, that's who it is. Michael Bryant, new county. Yes. Taking the place of Dina DiOrio. Come on, join us. And if you sign up right now, we'll let you in free. So please join the email list. We'll see you next week, folks.